prop and you're in the right hand side of the field, and the best thing for this scrum is to stay steady or to go slightly up on the left, and you're going mad on the other side trying to just take your own man out. That's selfish play. Even though you might could put him under pressure, it's not the best thing for the team. So it's how you understand all those roles, and then of course the mental fortitude part of it's very how you deal with pressure as well, and that's very important, because there won't be a time when these guys won't be under pressure, at some stage during the Six Nations.
Yeah, and I guess all of this is really looking forward to the World Cup. Let's have a look at the hooker depth chart, because at the moment obviously Rory Best is ahead. This is what we have at the moment now. I suspect that Joe Schmidt's probably doesn't have Sean Cronin quite so high. So Rory Best at 9, Sean Cronin on 7, James Tracy and Niall Scannell on 5 apiece. I don't know.
It's a toss of a coin. I mean, Herring is there. He was there at the last one, and I'd agree. I mean, it's very hard to pick that, and Strauss hasn't been there for quite a while, so I suppose he wouldn't be factored in. But there's no real outstanding candidate within that second kind of tier, if you like. Yeah, I mean, there's some good players and promising players, certainly, but they haven't been given enough game time, and a lot of it can be just the look in terms of where you are at that. Say, for example, if there is an autumn international and somebody's injured and you happen to get in and you pitch very well, then you are that player coming through, So a lot of it is timing, but Rory has the job at the minute. He's doing a good job. He's obviously the leader of the team as well, which is very kind of instrumental in terms of going forward, and Joe won't change that. I mean, that's definitely not going to change.
Cronin, he is season by season though, Rory Best, at this point of his career. It's not like we're saying he's 26 and he's going to be great by the time the Rugby World Cup rolls around. So we need a potential replacement, and we need a backup.
That's a hard decision. You're right. That's an absolutely, and it's that kind of thinking that will kind of creates, I suppose, shock decisions. You know what I mean? If he wasn't picked, you'd be very surprised, wouldn't you? And there's a basis for that, and you have an argument for that in terms of the age factor and the World Cup coming up. He'll be there, I'm pretty sure. World Cup is, give or take, a year just over, and so on. So he'll definitely he'll be in shape for that. He'll be shaping to do that. The worry is developing something to come in behind him, and then I'd say after that, then he'll call it quits. But there's nothing really kind of jumping out at me coming in behind. Cronin is obviously, from the point of view, impact-wise, the strongest guy because of his ability to carry. He's a very, very good guy. When teams with defences are a little bit more exposed, say in the last 20 minutes of a game, he's very, very hard to handle, like when he gets on the ball. And I think maybe just based on that and the fact he's come back a little bit, he might squeeze himself in there. Again, he's not the youngest guy in that setup either, and Joe might have an idea to bring somebody through, like, as we said, Tracy, Scannell, these guys, I mean, who've already cut their teeth as well, and not done badly. They've done well.
Are they separating themselves, or any of them separating themselves?
That's the thing. That's the problem, is they're not really separating themselves. They're all doing the basics well, and they're throwing the line out. I mean, the line out even under pressure when I've seen them in the, it's all there, but it's just that little kind of, I suppose the way I'd put it is you have to, what's important again in hooker, the other thing is that's less so a problem, more so in hooker, is your personality. So the guys who get their hands on the ball the most need to have strong personalities within the team, because they dictate the play. So you're talking hookers, number 8, 9, 10. And if those guys don't have a strong personality within that, and then I'd add in the second rows in there, because they're the kind of enforcers of the pack, if you like. So you need to have at least one of them to have a strong, an O'Connell type attitude if you're going to succeed. And that's been the case in all World Cup wins. If you want to compete in a World Cup, they've never had weak second rows in terms of personality, and they've always had a strong hooking personality. And someone like Dylan Hartley, who people either love him or hate him, he has that abrasive personality. And unless one of those guys, the best guys I played with as hooker, for example, always had a strong personality. They always did. They stepped forward. And you don't need to be like a Dylan Hartley type. You can be like Rory Best, where you're kind of more quiet, but the intensity's there, and the kind of mental fortitude is there. And that's where I can't see that separated within these guys. They all do their jobs well, and they're all good players around the park and all the bits. It's that personality bit that I can't see. Rory Best still standing out there.
All right, great stuff. Thanks very much for explaining all that for us.
Yeah, no problem at all. Yeah.
We'll be updating more of those depth charts as we roll across the next couple of weeks after the European Games, obviously, and into the Six Nations, before we pick our team just in advance of Joe Schmidt actually naming his as well. Now, let's bring you something from the paper review yesterday. Obviously, a sensational reaction to Paul Kimmage and Pádraig Harrington's in studio. One of the topics for conversation was Joe Brawley's piece in the Sunday Independent, where he talked about the influence that Sky and AIB are having, for example, when it comes to the sponsorship arrangements that they have with the GAA and the benefits that they get from it. The conversation picked up on that point. Here's how it went.
I think there has been great unease about Sky and matches behind a paywall. I suppose, how often do you write about it? Every week, every month? How can you keep saying the same things? Ultimately, the GAA have, in a lot of people's eyes, failed on this point.
Going back to that, cheaply and peanuts takes away from his argument.
It does, actually.
That there's no price. Yeah. Now,
that's the headline, not to get back to our initial debate.
It's cheaply in it. It's mentioned later on. The other point...
Whereas you're saying
if it was the old Setanta Sports, if they were doing it, would we have an issue only that this is English?
I think the paywall is the issue.
I'm not sure. I'm just saying. Yeah. Is there
it's a fair question. Is there colonial overtones?
And is he picking on Sky? Would it be if it was somebody else? If it was a different sponsor, AIB? Did he mention AIB?
Oh yeah, look, he's a good guy. He says what he says of AIB, to be honest, is he talks about AIB bringing. Remember Chris Kamara and Jeff Stelling came over. Yeah. So he picks out that, and he's talks about it's a good way to deflect from the reality. Go stand outside the High Court some morning, watch AIB's legal team at work, watch the distraught families leave the court. Is that tough? Because the toughest is their tagline. So I mean, he's absolutely having a go at an Irish company here as well. Yeah. I think with Sky it's the paywall more than the English colonial. I just
you're
wondering.
Well, I'm looking at the commercial reality that GAA needs the money.
Yeah, so that's a longer conversation that has been sparked by Brawley on multiple occasions. In fairness, it wasn't just his piece yesterday in the Sunday Independent, but I guess yesterday was the closest that we've seen to a manifesto from Brawley in terms of it being one of the calmest pieces, I would argue, that he's written in a long time. And just generally the whole point was the importance of the Director General's job, and unless the Director General of the GAA calls halt to the commercialisation of the GAA, then in his own words, the GAA is fucked. And he's been making this point again and again and again in different ways. But now the appointment of that job is imminent, and so therefore this is at its kind of peak importance. So, I don't agree with most of, that's not true. I agree with a lot of what Brawley had to say, and I think one of my mates was telling me that he was listening to Harrington describe Brawley's piece, and it was like, I agreed with parts of it, and then I was angry about bits of it, and then I agreed with it again, and then I was angry again, and then I disagreed with it, and I was like, yeah, that's kind of exactly how that piece works.
Ups and downs, I think Harrington said.
Yeah, you have that sense that that's Brawley's viewpoint, and it's a worldview, and he has to get it out there and express it, and that is the starting point for the conversation. And in any proper democracy, there should be room for people to go, hang on a second, there's this alternative viewpoint, but there aren't that many people expressing that viewpoint, it seems, which is weird considering we all end up talking about it a lot, primarily because he writes about it a lot in the Sunday Independent, and it becomes one of the dominant narratives. And yet it doesn't actually seem to be a narrative that is current in Croke Park, and it doesn't seem to be a narrative that's current amongst the people who go to Congress, for example, because you never hear this type of stuff really said at Congress, and certainly not said in as coherent a way as it was yesterday. I think that's definitely one of Brawley's better pieces on this topic in a while.
Yeah, coherence isn't exactly something you hear a lot at Congress, to be honest. Of course, it has to do with the fact that people are making speeches and Brawley has time to editorialise over his article over the course of a week. The thing with this point about Brawley, though, is that we're not sure if he's going to be right or wrong until it's too late. If he's right and the wrong decisions have been made with the Director General job, with potentially the next batch of television rights, then it is too late, as in the chipping away of the whole GAA idea is something that Brawley's very conscious of. But one thing that Harrington pointed out yesterday, which it's a very simple point, but one that part of me kind of agrees with, is that if this was Air Sport who had the championship rights, would Joe Brawley be kicking up as much of a fuss? And I think there is something in that. I agree with what Harrington is saying there to a certain extent. I maintain, or Paul Kimmage maintains, that isn't really the case, that it is to do with commercial only and it's something to do with this colonialism. But I'm not so sure. I think there is an element of that in it.
I think that the hatred of Rupert Murdoch definitely feeds into it. And I mean, I think people are entitled